Welcome back. It is time to get this PTO unit put back on the rear end of that 1855. Trying to clear up some space so I can get the corn planter in here and prep it for planting. That time is coming very soon. It'd be kind of nice to have a table to work on with stuff, and by golly, this is where it can go back on there and get out of the way. So let's get her done. There is a video of this unit getting rebuilt. So if you're along with another one out of an 1855, let's set you down right here. Need to get my lift chain on there. Scraping all the purple paint off the table. Pink. No, it's not pink. It's purple. But get my lift chain on here. Put the PTO shaft back in. That one's got a little wear on it, but we'll put it in for now, just because it'll get paint on it. And then I can swap it out for a better one after it's painted. How about that? Let's see, 1,000 is in. I've got it shifted into 1,000. We can fix that. Oh, now I remember why. I left it at 1,000. Because out is 540. And then that'll get paint on it, and then it makes it push in and out hard. Maybe I'll find 1,000 shaft to stick in there for now. Well, here's the 1,000 shaft. And the splines were kind of crusty and took a little filing to clean up. It's one I hadn't used in a while, or this one might be the one from... No, I think they had a good bearing on it, but Crazy Dave gave me a couple thousand RPM shafts. Thank you very much, Dave. So whether this is one of them or not, I put a new bearing on it, and now it slides in and out like it should. Well, I got thinking, you know what the first thing PTO wise this tractor is going to do most likely is be on the dyno, and I'll want the 1,000 shaft in for that. So we might as well just start with it. I'll just do my best to not get too much paint on the splines, or they get so thick you can't get the PTO shaft on. It probably needs a little bit of color, but we'll avoid the primer. Try not to build that shaft up too much. I've made that mistake before. And if you're wondering on the ins and outs, getting windy. We've got some severe weather. Chances are tornadoes and hail and all sorts of stuff this afternoon. It is April. I think we'll call it the 5th. Sounds good enough to me. So if you see this video, I probably survived. But there are other videos on my channel about switching speeds on these dual speed units. If you don't have these, this shift rail right here, you do not have a dual speed unit. That's pretty straightforward. They both have the same housing, whether it's a single or a dual. Single speed just has a plug in there to keep the oil from coming out. So if you don't have the rail, if you don't have a bolt in it, there'll still be a threaded hole in there to put a bolt in. If you don't have that, you've got a single speed. And I'm gonna put a wrench on these two plugs. These are the check plugs for the rear end. The top one, let's turn you this way. The top one is where you should be filled up to. And this bottom one, if you're doing stationary PTO work on level ground, you can run it as low as that. It's just best to fill it up, but The trans lube pump will still get oil at that level, but if you're out in a field and you go up a hill or something, you could start sucking air when it's down that low. So that's the only purpose of that one. They both came out just fine and dandy. Biggest reason I want to check now is if they don't, well, I can either drill them out or put some heat to it or something. But I should have checked it while it was still, maybe I did, I just don't remember. While it was still apart. Because that way, if you have to drill them out and easy out them or heat them or something like that, you ain't got to worry about pieces falling in the rear end. You can clean it back up. So we'll go with the idea that I already checked them because they came out easy enough. I think I'll put some leak lock on them so they don't leak. And then we'll be ready to lift it. I think she's ready to go. I have this pipe to put over here. Helps give me some leverage for maneuvering. My gasket is all doped up. And I can't remember. Seems like you have to kind of swing it in and I think the pins work all right. But we're gonna try them for guidance. It might be the 50 series, but one way or another, I think it kind of has to tilt just a little bit to come in. But you'll have the neat, unique perspective of being able to see it come in from this side too. This is a gasket I had on hand, and it is the one for early 55 series had 3/8 bolts holding stuff down, and this later one has 1/2-inch bolts. So the bolt holes ain't quite big enough in the gasket. So I got the right stuff ordered. Save this for a future project. I only had one of them anyway, so I still had to order a gasket, you know, one on each side of the pan. All right, let's make this happen. Oh yeah, I remember now. It is the 50 series because you have to kind of tilt it up into the clutch actuation levers that are in here. Don't have that problem with a 55 series with the hydraulically actuated PTO clutch. So we can just let her down. Whoops, the other down. We'll slide her on the pins. Probably. Okay. There we go. Yeah, these pins might not work on this. You're almost there, baby. There we go. They did work. There. And there. And there. Now we can whoop the other down. Well, we're on the top dowel pin. And we must be at least, yeah, we're started on the bottom one. We can start getting some bolts in there. My gasket was just a little bit shrunken, so the bolt holes ain't quite lining up. Taking a little bit to get them started, but that one started, but it's one there, it's turning a little easier. All right, I think we're good now. Now you shouldn't be able to get the gasket on wrong, but never say never, because the dowel pin holes only line up a certain way with the gasket. There's a hole at the top here, and your pressure lube comes through and comes in, goes through the housing, through and into lubricate the bearings. Now you may ask yourself, why did they go to a chain drive lube pump instead of, it was always in that position, but previously it was driven off the counter shaft of the transmission, this one here. So whenever the transmission was spinning, it had lube oil, and for the 50 series, that worked fine. Put this hydraulically actuated clutch pack in there, and the piston pushes against a bearing that then pushes against the actuator, because that's spinning and the piston can't spin or it'd tear up the seals. So you got this thrust bearing in there. It's a big one. If you've ever watched, I've got a couple assembly or rebuild videos for these PTO units, but if that starves for oil, it doesn't take it long to burn up. So say you're round bailing and you're sitting there waiting for your bail to tie off. This is spinning and you got your foot on the clutch pedal and the transmission wasn't turning and that lube pump wasn't turning. All of a sudden, you no longer have lube oil going to that PTO. The old manually actuated ones didn't rely on that thrust bearing and would have enough oil in them. They could survive for extended durations without lubrication oil. The 1800 and 1900 weren't even pressure lubed in the PTO. They just entirely relied on splash oil from the bull gears. And there was a little catch basin under there to kind of hold a little reservoir of oil for those times when the tractor wasn't moving. But then they found, you know, you do a lot of stationary work and the PTO can get a little dry on those 1800s, 1900s. So anywho, that was their solution, to put a chain-driven pump in the same location. Just added a sprocket up here on the drive that was going to drive the hydraulic pump. So whenever the engine is turning, the lube pump is also turning. So you've always got lube pressure, or you should always have lube pressure whenever the engine's running. Probably were some better solutions out there. You know, their resources were limited because every time they engineer something new, it has to be amateurized out over individual tractors. And Oliver just wasn't selling the numbers that Deere or IH or some of the other brands were, so that cost per unit goes up drastically. So you got to be careful on how much you spend on that stuff. You got to do it wisely. And who knows, maybe they just couldn't think of a better idea. I don't know. But that is why, of course, since this is always turning the hydraulic pump, they now feed oil to that. They didn't before. That was all splash lubed, which had its own issues in 50 series tractors. So overall, an improved design. Yes, they probably could have come up with something better. I think since they got the probably a common sump would have been nice. They were a little behind the times on that. If they'd somehow or another maybe rigged a sump up from outside, or just into that drive there like they did with the cooler pump, which they wouldn't need a cooler pump if it was common oil. You just put a larger pump in there, a thicker one that can move more volume. That could act both as your transmission lube, your cooler pump, and feed the hydraulic system, which is what they eventually did in the 2135, 2155 project. So they were working towards that, but just, you know, a relatively small tractor company, their resources are a lot more limited. Well, just for fun, let's put the power shaft in just so you can see what happens and what goes wrong when you're trying to take it out. I've done this in another video, but some of the old videos kind of get, I don't know, forgotten, but they just don't get watched by newer viewers. So, got shaft going in. The engine splines are smaller than the splines in the PTO drive hub here, so no issues there. They're smaller than everything else, so no issues there. Don't want to tear up my seal. So far, so good. I don't know if that it keeps it from getting too out of whack. Seal looks all right. So maybe putting that old seal shell in there was a good idea. So back here, we just had these splines engaged. There's a set of splines here, and there actually is a purpose for them. You can take your shaft down here and put it up here, and then you have engine speed PTO. The one thing you have to remember is not only is it turning engine speed, it's also turning engine direction, which is opposite of PTO speed. So it's turning this way. PTO is turning this way, clockwise from the rear, counterclockwise for the engine. So those splines enter there all right, and get up into there. It's the exact same splines. So we're now through the input shaft, and if the 3-speed was here, we'd be going through that. You'll notice this is a later shaft. It has a seal surface on it. Get up in there, and those splines are going to start about the same time. Do they start at the same time as the engine? Gotta say, this is kind of new for me too. Engine isn't quite there. And it might be a little cockeyed because there's no bolts in the holes. It's just sitting in the frame for the moment. There is a punch in the front hole, so don't wander too far. We're just about engaging stuff, so sometimes you have to turn it. I'm gonna just grab it up front here. Normally you can't do that. So I've engaged those splines, and I probably should have engaged the splines in there as well. You just can't see it from this side. Just about getting up to where that seal surface gets in there. And now we're engaging the engine end of things. Like I say, I don't think it's quite lined up the past. There it goes. It is in. So we got our seal surface, we got splines there, we got splines sticking out there. Shaft is fully in. Now, when you're taking this apart, here's what happens. This PTO, of course, it should all be lined up. This little hub can dangle a little bit, but it can also turn a little bit when you turn the shaft, and so as you pull it out, first it goes easy. You're engaging splines back there now with the splines that used to be here, and before they are totally out, these splines hit. They have to mesh, and let's get some light on that. And as we can see, they are not wanting to do it already, and I just put it in. See, now I could do something there. The easy solution is pull the hydraulic unit off and then just grab this and turn it a little bit. See, that turned. the PTO unit didn't, but when they're both, yep, see now it's not aligned. I give it just a little turn, boom, she goes right through. So that's what's happening. And if you turn the shaft, since the splines are engaged in the engine drive splines back in here, I guess I should have brought the light with me, but you get the idea. Any turning of the shaft while it's in this position also turns the PTO unit. And generally, even if you pull it forward, right there, it's gonna turn nothing. So what I do, some guys will put a impact on this shaft and that vibration will help things move and line up the splines. I just push the shaft all the way back in until it's engaging the engine, which is about there. Or maybe, nope, not quite. There it is. Then if I turn the PTO, which I'm doing the same thing by turning the drum here, you'll notice the shaft doesn't turn because the engine's holding it still. And you can try another spot, basically. Now it seems like it would still be lined up with the shaft in front of it, but somehow or another, it is not. So I just take the cover off, turn that a little bit, and boom. See how easy that is? Oh, we can see the seal is working. It wiped all the slimy, rusty grease stuff off back to that point. And I should probably quit putting my shaft in and out of this because, you know, I don't want to ruin the seal. That's what's going on. That's why it fights you. You can try turning the PTO unit to get those splines to line up. Usually it's just a matter, some guy, you can fight it for hours, walk away, go eat dinner or something, come back, and you try it again, and the next time it slides right out. Go figure. I would think the spline sets would be cut on the same line. So you know why it, so this gear should be lined up with that gear, but somehow or another, it never happens. Almost never. I have had once or twice where I've pulled on a shaft and it came out on the first try. I guess you do it often enough, sooner or later, the blind squirrel is gonna find a nut. All right, I think that is enough for this one. We are going to, I'm gonna get working on spring stuff here, so it might be a while, depending on what order all these come out in, before the 1855 gets more videos. Sadly, I was really planning on being a lot farther than this, but that's life. I get done what I get done. Oh, come on. I think I want to try to find a new shaft. The splines are kind of, they're not gone, but they got some definite wear on them. The hub was in excellent shape though. Well, through the magic of time travel, or also editing, it is now July 1st. We've had a graduation party, so I cleaned out my shop so we could do that in here. So for those of you that stick with the video and watch to the end, I appreciate it, because that supposedly helps my YouTube statistics or whatever. So I thought I'd give you a look at what a clean shop looks like. It's much better than it was. It really needed it. The graduation party went really well. We had good weather, good turnout, and so I'm happy with that. And then there is one other little bonus that I want to share for those of you that stick with the video and watch it all the way through. It's not just a clean shop, but my newest toy, my newest power shovel, the AgriVac 5614 grain vac. It just arrived. Let's see, today's the 1st. Yesterday. Yeah, it got here yesterday. So it has not been tried out yet. I've got a truck coming on Wednesday the 5th. We will be cleaning out some beans out of a bin so I can have a place to run wheat here in a couple of weeks. The wheat is mostly turned, but there's still a lot of green in the low spots, so it's a good 2 weeks out yet. I think the 2050 is going to run it first. I think they said a minimum of 85 horsepower, so we'll start with something that's good enough and work our way down to smaller tractors. 1,000 RPM, so that definitely limits what's going to go on it. But there we are. Stay tuned. Probably next Sunday's video will be this baby at work with a couple of different tractors. Probably just going to clean the rest of the beans out while I'm at it. The price is up, and it's as good a time as any to get rid of them. So as always, I appreciate everybody watching. I mean, look, there's floor down here. Look how easily distracted I am. Helps when you hide everything under the office. Gives you a lot more floor space. So, back away from the shiny things, and I appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you in the next one. Tune in to watch this baby.